Hello, world. Wanted to do a little review of the market here on the weekend as we head into the week. This is an interesting week. We've got This is the first week of 2025 with I think all traders will be back because last week we had New Year's Day halfway through the week. It's also an interesting week because lots of data coming out that could affect the market. Being the first week of the year, we've got, people are going to be meeting to talk about how to put their money to work this year. And I think a lot of big decisions are going to be made by a lot of big players. And so we're going to find out this week, I think, what we have in store, at least for the near term. And I think also, don't quote me, but I think this week we might actually have a half or full day off in respect of President Carter, who passed away last week. So crazy week. Now, I just watched Jim Dalton's video for the week ahead, which was awesome, as they always are. And he pointed out that here on ES and on NQ, we basically have been in balance for the last 2 weeks, while it's been the week of the Christmas holiday and the week of New Year's holiday. And so the major players were not present in the market. And this is what we've had, is basically balance. We had a big drop here back on the 18th of December. And since then we rallied up, couldn't break the high, rallied down, couldn't break the low, and we're basically inside this range that was set from this top down to this bottom over here. So balance, right? And if we look at this on SPY, you can see it here clearly as well. And if we look at it on QQQ, same thing. It's basically the same charts. This is the daily chart I'm looking at, obviously. And so, it makes sense. I think that the way to think about this as we go into the week is, if we rally to highs, we need to be cautious of a rejection. If we rally to and break out of the range and then do a little look above and aren't able to close above and sustain that move, then we need to be looking back to the downside, and vice versa. If we drop to the downside and we basically fail to close down lower, you need to be looking for that reversal back to the upside. And so that's just the balance rules. And so this is what I'm thinking about when we go into this week. But why are we in the situation that we're in? What are the names that are affecting the cues and driving the cues in one direction or the other? And I think, one of the things I often do, let me just move my little head down here. One of the things I often do is look at beta stocks. So this is the Mag 7, essentially. If we look at these, they sort of tell you like what is happening under the hood. Now, Apple had this insane rally that just kept going and going and going nonstop. And now they've finally had a pull in. And if you look at this just as the pivots go, this blue line here I've got, we were higher high, higher low, higher high, lower low, higher high, lower low. So we're basically in a megaphone pattern here right now. And essentially we're not really in an uptrend anymore, not on the daily time frame. But if we look at the weekly, we are in an uptrend. We had this consolidation, we broke out, we're scouting a weekly higher low. Typically to get a weekly higher low, you need 4-hour oversold. So let's look at this and see where's 4-hour oversold. How far away are we from that? Oh, we got it. So this could be the weekly higher low already down here. But I will say that on Friday we had some market strength, but Apple didn't really participate in that. And if we drop this daily view down and just go over here and look at this on the 30-minute chart, and I'll just clean this chart up really quick. This was Friday. We basically had sideways. We had an inside day on Friday, which was just teeny tiny. So volatility is coming to Apple for sure. Is it going to be to the downside or to the upside? I don't know. But I think we could go down further, but the most likely scenario at this point is a higher low on the weekly time frame. Like, we're going to get that weekly higher low and continue the trend up, I believe, unless the market completely falls over. So I'm thinking bullish on Apple. And coming into this week, I'm thinking I might try to make a trade against the low of Thursday, January 2nd, and see if that can hold. And if it doesn't, if it goes lower, I'm actually into that too. One of the indicators that I use a lot, that I wrote myself, is an extremes indicator, this one. And really, this one I use all the time to try to figure out, when are we so far stretched from the median of the trend that we're following, that it's most likely that we'll actually get a bounce back in the other direction. And I do that by looking at the hourly time frame pivots compared to the 4-hour EMA 12. And so I essentially see that we're getting very extended from the 4-hour EMA 12. That's all these little red dots here are telling me that, we're extended to the downside right now. It doesn't mean it can't go lower. It absolutely can. But it would make sense for a bounce back to the mean from here. But because we dropped to these lows and then went sideways, it's given the 4-hour EMA 12 time to catch up. So it's not as extreme as it was when it first fired. Still, for the most part, I find that when this does trigger, it's quite often, you get this dot, you get the little rocket ship, it quite often does end up going back up to the upside. So, here's a good example of like a big drop, get all the red dots sideways for a little while, and then eventually resolve back to the upside, and don't go lower than that again. So who knows what's going to happen? This was a pretty serious drop, but that's something that I'm always paying attention to. And so Apple is a big one that we need to be watching, and it's basically trying to set a weekly higher low at this point. Meta is kind of in a no man's land. Don't really want to talk about that one. Amazon drifting lower. Nothing serious in terms of downside action here. We did get this extreme dip down here on the 30th of December, and then since then it has not been able to go lower than that. So again, here's another example of that trigger firing and it just being a great buy opportunity. The big one for me was Tesla. I traded this on Friday, and this was a great trade for me. And essentially what happened is we got these extreme lows on Thursday of last week. And then on Friday morning, I was looking at the open interest changes on options chain, and I saw that there was a huge flip to the call side on Tesla. So right off the open, my plan was to buy against the low of Thursday, but it didn't go down. Right off the open, it just sort of wobbled right there, which is very unusual for Tesla. Tesla tends to do huge whipsaws in both directions, and so I was expecting it to whipsaw up, whipsaw down, but it didn't. It just sat there right near the open, so I just bought. And I didn't do a huge position because my risk was quite large, in my opinion. That's much larger because I essentially had to risk to here from the open, which, for Tesla, that's actually quite a bit. That's, let's see here. That's down, almost 2.5%. And so not a great risk reward on a stock that might not move more than 6 or 7%. So, who knew what was going to happen? It was a smaller position for me, but then I just sat in it all day long because I had really nothing to lose, and it just went up and up and up and up, and ended up. And so here on what was that, January 2nd, I had basically my best trade of the year so far, where it just worked all day long. I didn't sell till the very high of day, and at that point, the reason I sold my full position at high of day was it was a huge win that I did not expect to get, and it was just sort of a gift from the new year. But Tesla's in a pretty clear daily downtrend. Yes, that was a nice big rally, but there was really, because it was such a steady drift up, there wasn't a lot of support built along on the way down. And so, when I look at this from a volume profile perspective, you can see I've got these orange, sort of light orange tan colored lines drawn here, these areas, and they're based off the volume profile I see over here to the right-hand side. And essentially, those are the spots where if we have a pullback in, that's where I would expect to find some kind of support. And I was looking at this, trying to think about where would I want to get long again, and I realized we're still in a daily downtrend, and like the right thing to do in this situation is actually play it short, especially if we get a gap up. So I looked to the other side and tried to identify where's the resistance above. So I called out a couple of those. There's one right here just above. If we gapped up into that, that might be a good spot. Here's another one above that. And, obviously I'll be looking at the call wall when it comes to options and seeing where people are expecting it to get to. But I think a gap up is definitely worth a short, just to see, are we going to continue in the daily downtrend or not? And sometimes it does that, especially because we're in this weird situation, like I said, where last week was the B team. It was the retail trading team. It wasn't the big money. And this week, we're finally going to have the big money back. And we're going to see, what does the big money think is going to happen? Where is the big money going to place their bets? Do they think this should go lower before it goes higher? So, I think it has a real possibility that we could actually open up tomorrow and the whole market could just fly and just skyrocket. or we could get a complete dump first thing tomorrow. So I just don't know, but I'm basically going to have to follow the trend as I see it, and the trend here is down. And so that's why I sold at the end of the day on Friday, and I was pretty happy. I don't really care that I missed whatever it drifted up here after hours, and I don't care that if it'll gap up. I was very, very happy with, like, honestly, it was probably one of the best day trades I've ever had, where I just nailed the bottom and the top of this move on the day. And so, yeah, thrilled about that, and thinking about how I can, take advantage of what I see here on the chart. Now, what is the possibility that it's going to keep going higher and higher? I think NVIDIA is the bellwether here, because look at this. We got this steady channel of downtrend action, and then we finally set a daily higher high, higher low, and then confirmed it on Friday with a nice big solid break on above average volume. And so, NVIDIA, there's potential here that NVIDIA is going to see fresh highs as early as this coming week. So if anything is going to save the market, it once again will be NVIDIA, but I just don't know. I think the healthier thing for NVIDIA would be to stay range bound, maybe set fresh highs, but then come right back down and stay in this range and build it for a long time, until we get another nice, huge leg up at some point in the future. But either way, I love NVIDIA as a trading stock, and it's something that I'm watching. And I also will point out that indicator I just talked about, where I do my extreme mean reversion trades. Where was it? Yeah, it didn't really get any major bottoms, but it already is getting major tops as far as the pivots go. Now, it can often hit these pivot tops, and it can just, keep pushing up through them. In a bull market, that can just keep happening. But it's worth noting we are getting those topside triggers, at least for the short term, on NVIDIA. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. I imagine we're going to gap up, but who knows? We'll see what I wake up in the morning and find on the chart. So when I look at next week, there's, like I said, NVIDIA probably going to be a gapper, Tesla probably going to be a gapper, Apple had that inside bar, and I'm looking to see which way that's going to break. But I'm interested in Apple long, but so much is going to depend on how the market opens tomorrow and what happens. Apple's not in a great spot, where if we get a full dump on the market tomorrow, Apple's it's already down so far that I don't think it's going to be the one you want to take short. I still think that if it did dump any further, then that's probably a pretty good buying opportunity, because it's been pulling back after this nice, really strong move up after a long consolidation. And so I'm still thinking long on Apple, and just looking for a good place to start a position, not necessarily a day trade, but maybe a swing. If we rally tomorrow, again, I actually think right off the open, it could be a good buy against the low of last Thursday. So that's what I'm looking at. That's what I'm thinking about. I'm excited for the year. I really think that the end of last year saw a bunch of changes for me personally in my trading, and I've been trading in a much more consistent way and seeing the market very clearly. And so I'm excited and hopeful for the year to come, and hope you guys all have a great trading week.